Hi friends, my name's Emma and let's talk spooky stuff. Welcome back to another video and welcome back to the last remake video I'm doing for 2021. This year I've talked about horror films that I believe deserve a remake. I've spoken about non-horror films that should be made into the horror genre for good reason. And today, you can see by the title, we're going to talk about books that I believe should be adapted into horror movies. And these aren't just favorite books of mine. I'm actually choosing books I think would make successful horror movies or have unique ways of telling the story that I think would really work within the genre. I think if they did it under the right production and right direction, they would be amazingly and truly horrifying. And of course, add your own thoughts. If you have a book that you've been thinking about would be a great adaptation into a horror movie, leave it down in the comments below. And also let us know why and how you think it would be done, because I think that's a big piece of the puzzle. You can say any book with any title, but you really need to visualize it actually being a movie and how they would do that. So let's get straight into the video. And the best place to start is with the scariest book I have ever read. And this is Head Full of Ghosts by Paul G. Tremblay. This is one of the most terrifying novels I have ever read, and let me tell you, it is pure horror. The book is told from the perspective of Mary, a woman who had a traumatizing childhood when her sister began to show signs of possession. Mary and then her family are put under more pressure, or really under a microscope, when they agree to be part of a reality show called The Possession. I don't want to ruin any of the book. It is amazing. I highly recommend it, and it is terrifying and twisted for a number of reasons that I would never want to spoil, so please do check it out. I always recommend that book. I think it's fantastic, especially for horror lovers. But the way the plot is told is why I think this would work as a film, because we don't just hear the story as it's happening. Mary is telling the story 15 years later to a writer, so the whole story is kind of flashbacks and recaps of what is happening, and you're being told or really fed these little pieces of the puzzle as you go. The idea of only realizing the true narrative in hindsight is something that I think would work really well for a film. It's a unique way to frame the movie. And I also think because the story has both themes of possession and the exploitation of reality TV, it's just very fitting for now, 2021. I know we're at the end, but you know, modern day. I think that this would work so well as an adaptation now. I think it's just the right time for it. The next book to movie idea I have is something I've been thinking about for a very long time, and I'm so surprised it hasn't been done yet. Roald Dahl is known for his classic yet dark children's books. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Matilda, The Witches, these have all been adapted. But as I said, there's always been something missing with his adaptations, and I'm really shocked that this has never been made. This gruesome, dark, comical story has been adapted to a stage play, and it's also been in rumors for the last 15 years on whether it's going to be made into an animation, or recently they've talked about turning it into a CGI film, like a live action film, but it's never actually been done, and the rumors are just that. They're rumors, nothing is solid yet. I'm talking about the disgusting, the vulgar, The Twits. If you don't know the story, it's about a spiteful couple that live in a strange home with no windows. They are meant to be hideous and repulsive, and their whole existence involves them playing practical jokes on each other. It's a strange, gross story that really turns the ugliness of someone into a curiosity for children. And the story was actually written because Dahl had a hatred for beards and thought they were the most disgusting thing on earth. And the joke is that Mr. Twit has unruly hair all over his face, and it's full of food and grit and grime and dirt, but he thinks it makes him look wise, which is why he keeps the beard. But that's why he's called Mr. Twit. Because he's a twit and he doesn't know it. Seems like a personal problem that Roald Dahl had, but you know, we're going with it. The thing is, as I've mentioned earlier about the curiosity, this story actually had the opposite effect on me. You're meant to be disgusted by these two beings and the way they interact with each other. Hearing the book or reading the book as a kid, you're really thinking about those grimy details and what that actually means. It made me so much more curious about these disgusting features that were written as grotesque. And it also made me really interested in the pranks they played on each other, like the glass eye or the worms as spaghetti. It seemed like the Twits were actually quite intelligent and they just had, let's just say, misplaced energy. So in my version of the Twits, I believe it should be quite theatrical, almost like Edward Scissorhands or Beetlejuice. And I do worry if they will have the same effect now being made. I wish this film was made in the 90s. I think it would have done amazing. But this is just kind of how I see it coming together. A theatrical version of that where the Twits are living on this street and a new family move in and they have children who become curious about the Twits. And, you know, they do the whole thing where they break into the house and they get caught by them and they get to know them. It obviously starts off as the Twits being like this urban legend, you know, this neighborhood tale about these hideous people and all the awful things they do to them and the kids being really scared of them at the start. And then it would morph into this warm story about not just judging a book by its cover, but the whole idea that no matter who someone is or how they look or how weird and wacky they are, they have a place where they fit in society. And it's not about changing them. It's not about shaving off the beard, although I do love a good makeover montage. It's about them being them and being accepted by everybody. I think it would be cool to do a whole backflip on the way the story was written and how it was about how gross these people were and this man for having a beard, and turn it into being accepted just the way you are. So obviously I'm thinking about this in the same way as like a kid's horror movie that has a good message, just like Roald Dahl's other work, you know, The Witches or Matilda. I mean, Matilda's not a horror, but really it could be. I don't know, let me know if you agree. I think that this has to be adapted one way or another. I would like a horror movie, and if they could make it a horror movie with like a kid's story, that would be interesting. But if you want to make the Twits just Texas Chainsaw Massacre family, by all means, I'm happy to see that too. Okay, the next book, this one is a little bit tricky. It's House of Leaves. I'm sure a lot of you were expecting me to say this. Again, another very surprising book that is very famous that has not been made into a movie. House of Leaves is one of the most challenging books you can ever read or that was ever made. Why, you ask? It's because of the typography. The novel is out of this world. It's mirrored, it's in boxes, it's upside down, it's one word at a time per page. And just to add something else to it, it's two stories being told at the same time. There's a third that's kind of put in there at the end. I'm not really going to mention that in this, but I am going to focus on the two major plots. So the book, published in 2000, was written by Mark Z. Danielewski, and the main story is the Navidson Record. This is about a family that move into a house, and before they know it, their house starts changing, and outside the measurements of the exterior of the house are different to inside, and before they know it, they find all of these, I don't really want to go into too much detail because of spoilers, but they find extra space in their house and they decide to explore it, and that actually turns into a piece of work that is like a documentary. The documentary is captured by the father of the family, who goes in to the space in the house that seems new or foreign. It's just like this endless void, and goes in with a group of people and they record on video and take photos along the way. So, I mean, if you haven't got the visuals for it already, it'd just be the most amazing mockumentary, found footage type film. And, you know, it's based on this incredible story that a lot of people know. And it's just, the imagery, the way I visualize it in my head, is just immense and dark and really creepy and disturbing. So this one is like full-on horror, found footage, just spine tingling. So the other part of the book is Johnny's story, and I'm gonna put this really plainly because I'm telling you, there's lots of detail in this book, and I'd be here forever if I had to explain it for what it really is. But the idea of Johnny's story is Johnny is a young man who becomes obsessed with this work of fiction, maybe, this writings that he finds that were by this old man. He finds this in a trunk. And then he has this experience where he isn't sure what is reality and what is fiction, and he starts to lose his own sanity. So my idea is to keep those two stories completely separate and not in a way that you have part 1 House of Leaves and part 2 House of Leaves, but side A and side B. You could definitely do it so the actual Blu-ray comes side A, side B, but the whole idea would be that they are completely different stories, different styles, maybe even directed by different people. They don't need to be watched together for you to understand each. But if you do watch them, both of them, they will have clues in each film that would give you more context or more answers to the situation for both of the films. Are you getting what I'm putting down? I need some like Jordan Peele-esque type writing where he can really put some clues and some more information into the subconscious of the film so that something would click while you're watching the other one, but they can still be watched by themselves. What I'm saying is it's going to be a real hard film to pull off and there's going to be a lot of writing in it, but that's exactly what the book is, and I think that that's a good interpretation of the book because it's written in this such an intense way and such a creative way, and I think how amazing would that be to transfer what you see as these different puzzles on all of the pages, because even the footnotes in the pages are completely fictional and point to different clues, and there's just so much you can read in it. And I think that's the only way you would be able to take the essence of the book and turn it into a movie, as if you did the same thing. If you took those stories apart and really told them fully so people could appreciate them, but then also added some extra context that would really mess with the way you view it if you watch it together. I'm sorry, I hope I'm making sense. I'm gonna move on. Here's a straightforward one for you all. If you have been on this channel for a while, you would know that I am obsessed with this next book. I talk about it all the time. It's A Magician Among the Spirits by Harry Houdini. This story is one of the most heartfelt stories ever, and it's not a novel. The book is written by Harry and it's about his quest to find and really expose spiritual mediums for what they are: frauds. So in this book, he goes out and he seeks out psychics, clairvoyants, mediums, spiritualists, and he finds their tricks and how they're playing him and other people, and you know, debunks them. And because of who he is, he's, you know, the greatest illusionist to have ever lived. He is an expert in the field. So it's very interesting it coming from his perspective. The reason why I say it's heartwarming and emotional is because the reason behind it. There's a little bit of anger and passion behind it. Houdini had a very tight bond with his mum, and when she passed away, he wanted more than anything just to talk to her one last time. So it was kind of like the idea of him seeking out these psychics as a way to, is this a possibility? Is this, you know, a path to be able to connect with the other side? And then him finding out everyone he spoke to was all fraudulent. So there is a whole story behind that, and definitely something that could be adapted to screen really well. And I'm thinking, obviously he debunks these people, he calls them out, he figures out how they're doing what they're doing, and then he either gets completely fooled by someone up to the very end, when you realize they are a fraud, but he really believes that he can finally speak to his mother, or we go the other way around and he actually meets someone who is for real. So I definitely think there's a story there that needs to be told, but if you haven't read the book is amazing, and I highly recommend it. It's just really interesting because you actually learn all the tricks of the trade back then of how they were fooling people, and it's quite sad to read, but it's also factual. So it's an amazing read, and I think that it needs a push somewhere else in media because people need to know that this exists, and it's just an amazing story. And my last one today is something that I think would make an awesome, again, it's like I wouldn't say it's a children's movie. It'd be more of an early crowd into horror movie. This is, I'm gonna call it by its English name because I really don't want to offend anyone who's German. If you haven't seen this image before, it's very alarming. So this is a German children's book from 1845 by Heinrich Hoffmann, and the book has 10 moral stories for children. And the first one is Shockheaded Peter, or Shaggy Peter, which is the English version of it, which is what the actual book is called. Okay, I'll try. Struvel Peter. How'd I do? This whole book is gruesome and exaggerated, and these horrible little dark stories that really, and I've heard people say this from Germany, just completely terrified and traumatized generations. For example, a man with giant scissors who comes through the window and cuts off a boy's thumb because he was sucking his thumb too much. You know how it goes. My thought is, obviously we need Del Toro. This would be a perfect adaptation, just like Scariest Stories to Tell in the Dark, but I would love to see it in German. Just really dark and gritty, bringing these illustrations that are so famous and so ingrained in people's trauma to life. Yeah, it's so scary and I love it. And the stories are just like really quick and these kind of poems. Yeah, they're just very interesting stuff. And the idea of just scaring kids for the sake of scaring them and trying to teach them a lesson, like not sucking their thumb, is just terrifying in itself. Like, humans are really evil, and this book shows that. So I would love to see this be adapted, whether it's just short stories like anthology style or something longer that involves all of the characters, but it definitely needs it, and I think there's a spot for it. I really think anyone watching this would probably agree that this is really cool imagery that needs to be on the screen at least one time. There you go. Those are the books I would love to be made into horror movies. I would also really like Rumpelstiltskin to come into the horror zone. I know he's been on a couple of TV shows, but I'm a huge Rumpelstiltskin fan. Love him. And I wish they would make a really scary one, like Leprechaun-esque, but like modern. I love it. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, let me know. Also, be sure to check out my other remake videos. They're really fun and the comment sections on there are really cool. So thank you, and please, again, share your opinions and the books you want to be remade. I might get to read a couple of them. I hope you're all having a fantastic day. I'll be back before Christmas with one last Christmas video. Probably not what you're expecting. Something a little bit fun and a little bit different. So I'm excited to see you then. And please remember to stay safe this holiday season, and I'll see you very soon. Stay spooky, friends. Bye.